Silence ruled the Grand Council chamber. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic hum of thousands of universal translators, struggling to convert dozens of alien languages into words every species could understand. At the center of the immense chamber stood Captain Desung. His posture was flawless, his expression unreadable. He looked neither nervous nor angry. Around him, 43 representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations sat in towering concentric circles that stretched almost to the ceiling. Some watched him with glowing eyes, others through mechanical sensors. A few possessed no visible eyes at all, yet he could still feel their attention fixed upon him. Every gaze carried the same question: what will humanity do now? Standing beside Desung was Ambassador Hyojin. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her breathing calm despite the tension filling the room. Behind them stood a small delegation of human officials, scientists, military advisors, diplomats. No one spoke. No one even shifted their weight. Everyone already knew why they had been summoned. At the highest tier of the chamber, Prime Arbiter Quindel slowly rose from his ancient throne. His impossibly long body unfolded with deliberate grace, resembling a fragile scroll opening after centuries of being sealed. His iridescent skin shimmered with colors beyond the human eye. Moments later, the translators transformed those colors into spoken language. Even before the machines finished, Desung already understood. The verdict had been decided long ago. After 7 standard years of investigation, deliberation, and review, Quindel's voice echoed through the enormous chamber. The Galactic Council has reached its final decision regarding the status of humanity. The room became so quiet that even breathing seemed too loud. Desung felt Hyojin's shoulder lightly touch his. A silent gesture. Support, solidarity. He appreciated it. But he didn't need reassurance. Not anymore. Months of committee hearings, political negotiations, closed-door meetings. Every report had pointed toward this exact moment. Nothing said today would surprise him. Quindel continued. Humanity is hereby designated, he paused deliberately, a probationary species. A holographic emblem appeared above the chamber. The words glowed in cold blue light. Probationary status. Active murmurs spread among the delegates. Several representatives nodded with satisfaction. Others looked uncomfortable. The humans remained perfectly still. The designation carries mandatory restrictions designed to preserve stability and maintain order throughout Council space. One by one, new regulations appeared across the holographic display. No authorization for new colonial expansion. Another line appeared. All future spacecraft must conform to civilian specifications. Another. Military research requires Council approval. Another. Strategic weapons development is suspended indefinitely. Another. Independent exploration beyond assigned sectors is prohibited. Each sentence struck like another chain being wrapped around humanity's future. The list continued. Trade limitations. Mandatory inspections. Restrictions on artificial intelligence. Limits on resource extraction. By the end, humanity would possess little more than the illusion of independence. Finally, Quindel lowered the display. These measures are not punishment. They are safeguards. His ancient eyes settled upon the human delegation. Your civilization advances too rapidly. You possess great potential, but potential without proper oversight has often resulted in instability. The chamber remained silent. Several delegates nodded again. Others avoided looking at the humans altogether. Captain Desung slowly lifted his head. When he spoke, his voice carried no anger, only quiet confidence. So, he glanced at the holographic restrictions. You fear what humanity might become. Quindel answered immediately. We exercise caution. Desung gave the smallest hint of a smile. Caution. He repeated the word as though tasting it. Interesting. The Prime Arbiter narrowed his eyes. Do you disagree with the Council's assessment? Desung looked around the chamber. 43 civilizations. 43 governments. 43 species, convinced they were protecting the galaxy. Or perhaps, protecting themselves. We've spent years proving we're peaceful. We've honored every treaty, shared our discoveries, rescued worlds that weren't our own. He paused. And yet today, you reward cooperation with restrictions. The chamber grew uneasy. Several delegates shifted in their seats. Dezung continued. You claim these measures preserve peace. But peace built on fear isn't peace. It's control. No one interrupted him. Even Quindel remained silent. Dezung took one slow step forward. History has taught humanity something important. The moment a civilization becomes afraid of another's potential, it stops seeing a partner and starts seeing an enemy. His words echoed across the chamber. No one argued, because too many remembered their own histories. Finally, Quindel spoke. Captain Dezung, are you rejecting the council's ruling? The human officer met his gaze without hesitation. No. Another uneasy silence. We reject something much larger. Quindel frowned. What is that? Dezung's eyes swept across every representative in the room. The belief that freedom must be earned through permission. The words struck the chamber like a shockwave. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Dezung turned toward the exit. His delegation followed without another word. Behind them, 43 civilizations sat in complete silence. For the first time since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, the delegates realized something unsettling. They had expected fear. They had expected protest. Perhaps even anger. What they had not expected was absolute confidence. And somehow, that frightened them far more. A stability tax of 15% on all human economic activity. Humans could work in council space, but could not hold positions of authority over other species. The list went on. Councillor Vexathar leaned forward in his seat. The old Mulvari looked satisfied. He had argued for these restrictions louder than anyone. Your species has shown admirable technological progress, he said. But your history of conflict, your rapid expansion, your aggressive nature, these things require management for the good of all. Dezung listened to every word. He had heard it all before in the preliminary hearings. Humanity was too young, too violent, too unpredictable. Never mind that humans had been peaceful members of the Council for 73 years. Never mind that human engineers had built half the infrastructure in Council space. Never mind that human doctors staffed most of the major hospitals. The past mattered more than the present, and the past said humans had once fought among themselves. Does the human delegation wish to respond? Quindel asked. This was it. The moment everyone expected the humans to argue, to plead, to rage against the unfairness. Dez could feel the anticipation in the room. Some species probably hoped for anger. It would confirm their beliefs about human nature. Dezung stepped forward. Prime Arbiter, honored counselors, he said. His voice was calm and clear. We thank you for your consideration of our position. We accept the Council's decision. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Several translation devices chirped in confusion, as if they had misunderstood. We came to the stars seeking friendship, Dezung continued. We offered our knowledge, our work, and our partnership. If the Council has determined we are not ready for equal standing, we respect that judgment. He paused. The silence was deeper now, confused. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity will begin withdrawing all personnel from Council space. We will return to our own territory. The Council need not concern itself with managing our probationary status. We simply will not be here to manage. The confusion turned to shock. Councillor Broth stood up quickly. The Thulian's large frame seemed to fill his section of the chamber. You cannot simply leave, he said. You have obligations, contracts, responsibilities. Ambassador Hai Jin spoke for the first time. Her voice was gentle but firm. All contracts will be honored to their completion dates or bought out at fair market value. All responsibilities will be transferred to qualified personnel. We are not abandoning our duties. We are simply choosing to go home. But your people are everywhere, Vexar said. He sounded less satisfied now. Your workers maintain critical systems. Your doctors staff our hospitals. Your engineers will train replacements during the transition period, Heejin finished. We estimate 6 months should be sufficient for an orderly withdrawal. Any systems we cannot properly hand over will be shut down safely. We would never leave dangerous situations unresolved. Quindle's colors shifted rapidly. The translation device struggled to keep up with the multiple emotions. "This is not the expected response," he said. "We anticipated negotiation, perhaps an appeal process, not abandonment of your position in the council." "With respect, Prime Arbiter," Desang said, "we have no position in the council. You just made that clear. We are probationary. We are restricted. We are by your own words not ready to stand as equals among you. So we will not stand among you at all." The chamber erupted in noise. Different species arguing with each other in dozens of languages. The translation devices gave up trying to make sense of it all. Some counselors seemed angry, others confused, a few looked worried. Des turned to Haijin. She nodded slightly. They had said everything they needed to say. Together, they walked toward the exit. The other human officials fell in step behind them. "You are making a mistake," Biextar called after them. "You need the Council's protection. The galaxy is dangerous for isolated species." Desung stopped at the doorway. He looked back at the Mulvari counselor. "We survived alone in our part of space for 73 years before joining you. We will manage." As they walked through the corridors of Apex Station, Jiwan fell in beside them. He was Chief of Infrastructure Operations, a man who knew every human-built system in Council space. "Did you send it?" Heejin asked quietly. "The moment you said the words," Wan replied, "Operation Homecoming is active. Every human facility just received the order. We start packing tonight." They reached their shuttle in silence. Once inside, away from listening devices and curious aliens, Desung finally allowed himself to relax. He sat down heavily in his chair. "Do you think they understand yet?" he asked. Yajin shook her head. "No. They think we are hurt. They think we are running away angry. They don't realize we are simply done." Vexathar looked worried at the end. Jaijuan said, "He is starting to wonder what happens when we actually leave." "He should wonder," Heijin said. She pulled out her personal communicator and began typing. They built their entire modern civilization on a foundation they took for granted. They are about to learn what happens when the foundation walks away. The shuttle lifted off from Apex Station. Through the windows, they could see the massive structure shrinking behind them. Lights glowed across its surface. Human-designed power systems keeping everything running. Human-silt communication arrays connecting the council across light years. Human medical centers saving lives. All of it would be gone in 6 months. Desung looked at his companions. "Send word to Earth. Tell the President it is done. We are coming home. All of us." Jan smiled slightly. "The council called us probationary. They meant it as an insult. They don't realize they just set us free." The shuttle turned toward the edge of council space toward home. Behind them in the council chamber, the arguing continued. Nobody had noticed yet. The humans had not slammed any doors. They had not shouted or threatened. They had simply said yes, accepted the restrictions, and chosen to leave. It was the quietest revolution in galactic history, and it had just begun. The first week, nobody really noticed. A few human families packed up and left. Some workers gave notice at their jobs. It seemed normal enough. People moved around all the time in council space. The second week, the pattern became visible. More humans leaving. Always polite, always professional. They finished their shifts, trained their replacements, and departed. Still, it did not seem like a crisis, just an unusual trend. By the third week, Governor Mongai was starting to worry. He stood in his office on Thulian Prime, looking at reports from across his planet. 70 human engineers had left the Meridian Gate facility, the massive space elevator that connected the surface to orbit. It was still running, of course. The Thulian workers knew how to operate it. They had been doing it for years alongside the humans, but small problems kept appearing. A stabilization routine that did not work quite right. A material stress reading that nobody knew how to interpret. The humans had always handled these things. The Thuans had never thought to ask how. Taeyang was the last human engineer at the facility. Mongdai had called him in for a meeting. The young man sat across the desk, calm and patient. "You cannot leave," Mongai said. "The Meridian Gate needs you. We will double your salary, triple it. Name your price." Taeyang shook his head gently. "It is not about money, Governor. I am going home. My family already left last week." "But the elevator will function fine," Taeyang interrupted. "I have trained 12 engineers to handle all standard operations. All the documentation is updated. Everything is labeled and explained. What about non-standard operations? Yungai asked. Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Then you will need to figure it out. The same way we had to figure things out when we built it. You are intelligent people. You will manage. 3 days later, Taeyang departed on the last human transport. That same night, the Meridian Gate's main stabilization system failed. The Thulian engineers tried to fix it using the documentation. The words were all there. The diagrams were clear, but something was missing. Some understanding that the humans had never written down, because it seemed too obvious to mention. The space elevator survived, but its capacity dropped by 40%. Shipments backed up, costs increased, and nobody could figure out why. On Nexus 7, Dr. Suman was closing down an entire wing of the Council General Hospital. She had been medical director there for 18 years. In that time, she had revolutionized trauma care for 6 different species. Her techniques had spread across council space. Now she was leaving, and nobody knew how to continue her work. But you must stay, the hospital administrator pleaded. You are the best surgeon we have. The council needs you. Suman packed another box of her personal belongings. The council classified my species as probationary, as restricted, as not good enough. I am simply accepting that judgment and going home. We did not mean you specifically were. Yes, you did, Sumin said quietly. You meant all of us. Every human. You said we were too dangerous to trust with real authority. So we are leaving you to handle things with the people you do trust. She handed the administrator a data chip. This contains all my research, all my techniques, all my training materials. I spent 3 months putting it together. Anyone with proper medical training can learn from it. After she left, the hospital tried. They really did. But Suman's techniques required an understanding of human biological principles. She had adapted them for alien physiology, but the foundation was human medicine, and human medicine had advanced far beyond what the council realized. Surgical success rates dropped. Recovery times increased. Patients who would have survived now did not. The council's doctors were not incompetent. They were excellent by council standards, but council standards had not kept pace with human innovation. In the agricultural zones, Yuna was supervising the final harvest. She had been coordinator for the breadbasket colonies, 17 worlds that fed billions of people across council space. Before humans arrived, these worlds had struggled. The soil was poor. The climate was difficult. Crops failed regularly. Then humans came with their soil engineering, their crop rotation systems, their genetic optimization techniques. Suddenly, these worthless worlds were producing surplus food. Enough to end famines. Enough to stabilize prices across the entire council. Yuna was the last human agricultural specialist. She stood in a field on Harvest 9, watching local workers tend crops they did not truly understand. What do we do after you leave? One of them asked. Follow the seasonal schedule. Yuna said it is all documented. Planting times, rotation patterns, fertilizer ratios, everything you need. But what if something goes wrong? Yuna looked at the alien worker, a mulvery farmer who had worked beside her for a decade. Then you will solve it. You are farmers. You know your land. Trust yourself. What she did not say was that the miracle crops were not really crops. They were carefully engineered organisms that required constant monitoring and adjustment. The humans had been making thousands of tiny changes every season, responding to weather patterns, soil shifts, pest adaptations. It was not something you could write in a manual. It was knowledge built from experience and human agricultural science that was centuries ahead of council standards. 6 months after Yuna left, crop yields on Harvest 9 fell by 50%. The Mulvari farmers tried everything. They followed the documentation perfectly. But the crops were dying anyway. Something about the soil chemistry was wrong. The humans would have known how to fix it. The humans would have seen the problem coming months in advance. But the humans were gone. Across council space, the same story played out in 1,000 different ways. The quantum communication network started having problems. Humans had designed it, built it, and maintained it. The council's own engineers could keep it running. But the advanced features stopped working. Messages took longer. Encryption weakened. The network that had connected the galaxy began to fray. Fusion reactors ran less efficiently. Human physicists had been optimizing them constantly. Without that expertise, power output dropped. Not enough to cause failures, but enough to cause problems. Lights dimmed. Climate systems struggled. Energy costs increased. Jiwan coordinated it all from a command ship at the edge of council space. Reports came in from everywhere. Smooth departures, professional handovers, and growing panic from the species being left behind. The Thulians are offering us anything we want to stay. An aide reported full citizenship, council seats, complete autonomy, decline, Jiwan said politely. The Sithari are threatening legal action. They say we are breaking contracts. All contracts will be honored or bought out. Send them the financial details. Minister Kalth wants to negotiate. He says the council made a mistake. They want to reverse the probationary status. G1 smiled slightly. Tell him we appreciate the offer, but humanity has made its decision. We are going home. The last human civilian left council space on day 173. Ambassador Hieshin was on that final transport. She looked back at the council territories through a viewing port. Thousands of lights, hundreds of worlds. A civilization that had seemed so advanced when humanity first encountered it. Now she could see the cracks. The systems failing, the infrastructure degrading, all because the council had been built on a foundation they never appreciated. Her communicator chimed. A message from Minister Kelseith, an official report about economic disruption, request for human assistance, increasingly desperate offers. She deleted it without reading. The humans had tried to be partners. The council had made them servants. Now the servants had left, and the masters were discovering they never learned how to do the work themselves. The transport jumped to faster than light speed. Council space disappeared behind them. Ahead lay human territory, home, freedom, a future they would build themselves. Behind them, in the council chambers, emergency sessions were being called. Reports were piling up. Systems were failing, and nobody knew how to fix what the humans had built. Dalvor had been a minor bureaucrat his entire career. He worked in the Department of Infrastructure Assessment, a boring job that nobody paid attention to. He filed reports that nobody read. He documented systems that everyone took for granted. Now, suddenly, everyone wanted his reports. He stood in front of the full council assembly. Every species representative was present, even the ones who usually skipped meetings. They all stared at him with various forms of eyes, expecting answers he wished he did not have. The situation is worse than initially projected, Delvauer said. He activated the holographic display. A map of council space appeared floating above the chamber floor. Red indicators dotted the map like a spreading disease. Each red marker represents a critical system experiencing failures or significant degradation. There were hundreds of red markers, maybe thousands. The map looked like it had measles. Prime Orbiter Quindel leaned forward. Explain the severity. Dalver took a breath. The quantum communication network is operating at 37% efficiency. We have lost real-time communication with 62 colonies. Message delays are increasing weekly. At current degradation rates, we will lose network cohesion entirely within 8 months. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The communication network was everything. Without it, the council could not govern. Species could not coordinate. Trade would collapse. Fusion reactors across all major stations are experiencing efficiency losses, averaging 28%. Delvor continued. We are compensating by running backup systems, but those are not designed for continuous operation. We have already had 3 major power failures. One resulted in 47 deaths on station Kepler 9. The murmurs turned into worried conversations. Dalvor pressed on. Agricultural output has fallen by an average of 43% across the 17 breadbasket colonies. We are facing the first system-wide food shortage in 80 years. Current projections suggest famine conditions will begin in 4 months. How is this possible? Councillor Vexthar demanded. We have engineers. We have scientists. We maintained these systems ourselves. No, Delver said quietly. We did not. The humans maintained them. We assisted. There is a difference. He changed the holographic display. Now, it showed a breakdown of who actually ran critical systems. The numbers were damning. Humans had not just been workers. They had been the primary operators, the chief engineers, the lead researchers. In most cases, council species had been learning from them, not working alongside them as equals. They were integrated into everything. Dalver said, power generation, food production, medical care, communications, transportation, waste management, atmospheric processing. For 73 years, humans solved our problems. We became dependent without realizing it. This is sabotage, Councillor Brimoth declared. The Thulons stood up angrily. They deliberately made themselves necessary. Then they abandoned us. This is an act of war. Dalvor shook his head. My review of the records shows no evidence of deliberate dependency creation. The humans simply offered help. We accepted. They were good at solving problems, so we let them solve more problems. Over time, we stopped learning how to solve those problems ourselves. Then we forced them to return, Bra said. We send a fleet. We demand they honor their obligations to the Council. What obligations? Delvor asked. We classified them as probationary. We restricted their rights. They left. All of it was legal. All of it followed our own rules. The arguments erupted. Different factions shouting at each other. Some wanted military action. Others wanted to send diplomats. A few were already discussing which systems to abandon as unsustainable. Quindle called for order, but nobody listened. Dalivor quietly left the chamber. His report was done. What the council chose to do with it was not his concern. Outside the chamber, he nearly collided with Governor Mongday. Thethulon looked exhausted. Is it really that bad? Yongday asked. Worse, Delvor replied. The medical situation did not make it into my main report. I have a separate document for that. I do not want to know, Mongai said. He leaned against the wall. The Meridian Gate is barely functional. It was the centerpiece of our economy. Now it operates at a fraction of capacity. We are losing money every day, and nobody can fix it. Have you tried contacting the humans? They do not respond. We send messages to their territory. Nothing comes back. It is like shouting into a void. At the border of human space, Captain Wannick listened to those messages. His monitoring station picked up everything the council sent. Desperate pleas for help, offers of payment, threats of military action, apologies, more threats, more apologies. He deleted them all without forwarding them to Earth. His orders were clear. Maintain the silence. Let the council understand what it lost. Another medical emergency request from Satari Prime. His communications officer reported a plague outbreak. They say millions will die without human medical assistance. Wushik felt a twist in his chest. He was not a cruel man, but his orders were clear, logged and deleted. Captain, there are children dying. There were human children who would have died if we had stayed restricted and probationary, one said quietly. The council made their choice. They chose hierarchy over partnership. Now they live with that choice. His officer looked unhappy but nodded. One Shik did not like it either. But this was not about revenge. It was about teaching a lesson that needed to be learned. You cannot build a civilization by stepping on the people who hold it up. Eventually they will move, and everything will fall. Back on Satari Prime, the plague spread. It was not a new disease. It had existed for years, controlled by human medical techniques that the Satari doctors had never fully learned. They had the equipment, they had the medicines, but they did not understand the underlying principles. A human doctor could have stopped the plague in a week. A human medical team could have contained it in days. But the humans were gone, and the Satari were learning a terrible lesson about the difference between using someone's knowledge and actually understanding it. The death toll climbed. Thousands, then tens of thousands. The council sent emergency supplies, but supplies without expertise were just boxes of materials. The plague burned through cities. In the council chambers, the emergency sessions continued. Day after day, different crises competing for attention. The communication network failing, power shortages, food riots on 3 colonies, the plague on Satari Prime, a station decompression that killed hundreds because the safety systems had degraded. We need the humans back, Quindle finally admitted. Whatever it takes. Send a delegation. Offer them full council membership, equal status, reparations, anything. That is surrender, Brimath protested. That is survival, Quindle said. We cannot maintain our civilization without them. The data is clear. We are collapsing. They will not respond to messages. Minister Kath said. We have tried. They have gone silent. Then we go to them in person, Quindle decided. I will lead the delegation myself. We will go to Earth. We will negotiate face to face. We will bring them back. Bree crossed his arms. And if they refuse, nobody had an answer for that. The possibility was too terrible to consider. If the humans refused, if they chose to let the council collapse, then what? The greatest civilization in the galaxy, reduced to scattered species, struggling to remember how to do things their ancestors had known. They will not refuse, Quindle said. He did not sound certain. They are humans. They help people. It is their nature. They will see our suffering and agree to return. Dalvor, listening from the back of the chamber, was not so sure. He had spent months reviewing human history. He had read their literature, studied their philosophy, examined their culture. Humans did help people. That was true. But they also valued dignity. They valued respect. They valued being treated as equals. The council had denied them all of that. And now the council expected them to come running back, just because they were needed. Dalvor suspected the humans had a different idea of how this would go. They had left quietly. They had not made threats or demands. They had simply withdrawn and closed the door behind them. Getting them to open that door again would require more than desperate pleas. It would require something the council had never given them before, something many council members still did not understand how to offer. It would require treating humans as equals, not as probationary species, not as useful servants, as genuine partners. Dalvor wondered if the council could learn that lesson. He suspected they were about to find out the hard way. The delegation was being prepared. Ships were being loaded. Quindle was selecting his negotiating team. Soon they would travel to human space. Soon they would discover whether humanity was willing to save the civilization that had rejected them. Dalvor hoped they were. Because if the humans said no, he did not know what would happen to the council, to any of them. The red markers on his map continued to multiply. The council fleet arrived at the border of human space with great ceremony. 50 ships carrying diplomats, negotiators, and support staff. At the center, Prime Orbiter Quindle's personal vessel displayed the council's symbol for all to see. They expected to be welcomed, or at least acknowledged. Instead, they were met by a single human patrol ship. Council vessels. This is Captain Wan Shik of the Human Border Guard. You are entering restricted space. State your purpose. Quindle himself responded. This is Prime Arbiter Quindle, leader of the Galactic Council. We request permission to travel to Earth for diplomatic negotiations. A long pause. Then please stand by. The council fleet waited. Hours passed. Some of the diplomats grew impatient. This was the Prime Arbiter. You did not make him wait. Finally, one chick's voice returned. Permission granted under the following conditions. All weapon systems will be disabled and verified. You will follow the exact route we provide. Any deviation will result in immediate escort back to the border. Do you accept these terms? In the council flagship, Councillor Broth looked outraged. This is insulting. We are a diplomatic mission, not an invasion force. Accept the terms, Quindle said quietly. He understood. The humans were making a point. The council did not dictate terms anymore. Not here. Not in human space. The fleet weapons were powered down. Human inspection teams came aboard each ship to verify. It was thorough and professional, and deeply humbling for species who had considered themselves the masters of the galaxy. The journey to Earth took 3 days. As they traveled deeper into human territory, the council delegation saw things that shocked them. Massive orbital rings circled inhabited worlds. Structures so large they were visible from millions of kilometers away. Space stations that dwarfed anything in council space. Ships that moved with impossible grace, using propulsion systems the council scientists could not identify. How did they build all this in just 1 year? Minister Kalth whispered. Dalvor, who had joined the delegation as an advisor, had a theory. They did not build it in 1 year. They have been developing these technologies for years. They just could not use them in council space because of our restrictions. The implications hung in the air. Humanity had been holding back, working within the limits imposed on them. And the moment those limits were removed, they had leaped forward. Earth itself was beautiful. The blue planet hung in space, surrounded by construction, orbital elevators, solar arrays, manufacturing stations. All of it coordinated in a dance of progress that made the council's infrastructure look primitive. They were brought to a landing facility on the surface. Geneva, the humans called it, a city of gleaming towers and green spaces, clean air, efficient transportation, no overcrowding, no poverty visible anywhere. President Ensu met them at the government complex. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She greeted them with perfect diplomatic courtesy. No warmth but no hostility either. Welcome to Earth, she said. Please follow me. The negotiation room was simple. A large table, comfortable chairs, refreshments for all species requirements. Ambassador Hai Jin was there, older now, but still composed. Captain Des stood by the door. Several human officials lined one wall. Quindle began his prepared speech. He spoke of the Council's mistake of reconsidering humanity's status, of the offer to grant full membership with all rights and privileges. President Ensu listened politely. When he finished, she said one word: no. The Council delegation sat in stunned silence. Perhaps you misunderstand, Windell said carefully. We are offering full citizenship, equal status, a seat on the Council leadership, everything you wanted. We understand perfectly, Ensu replied, and our answer is no. We are not interested in returning to Council space. Minister Kalth leaned forward. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation, technology sharing agreements, territory, resources. Name your terms. There are no terms, Hines said. We are not negotiating. We are simply declining. Councillor Vexthar's patience broke. You cannot decline. The Council is collapsing without you. People are dying. Your medical knowledge could save millions. You have a moral obligation. We have no obligation, disrupted. His voice was hard. You made that clear when you classified us as probationary, when you restricted our rights, when you told us we were not good enough to stand as equals. We were wrong, Quindle said. He sounded tired. We admit it. We made a terrible mistake. Please, we need your help. You needed our help before, Ensu said. You just did not realize it. You thought you were managing us, controlling a dangerous species. You never understood that we were the ones holding your civilization together. She stood and walked to the window. Come, let me show you something. They followed her to an observation deck. Below, the city spread out. Above, orbital structures gleamed. In the distance, shuttles rose and fell in constant traffic. This is what humanity looks like when we are free. Ensu said no restrictions, no probationary status, no species telling us we are too violent or too young or too anything. Just humans building our future. We can offer you that freedom within the Council, Quindle said desperately. No, you cannot, Hajin said, because the Council is not about freedom. It is about hierarchy, about older species managing younger ones, about maintaining the established order. We do not fit into that structure. We never did. Brimith had been quiet until now. What about the people dying from the plague on Sithari Prime? Do they not matter to you? Design met his gaze. They matter very much, but they are not our responsibility. We offered to teach Sithari doctors our techniques. Your medical board rejected them as too experimental. You had 73 years to learn. You chose not to, so you will let them die. Primath demanded. We will let you handle your own problems, Insu said. The same way you expected us to handle ours if we had stayed probationary. The same way you would have handled them before we arrived. The meeting continued for hours. The Council offered everything they could think of. Power, wealth, authority, apologies, more apologies. Every offer was declined. Finally, as the sun set over Geneva, Ensu made her position clear. Humanity is not returning to the Council. Not now, not ever. We tried to be partners. You made us subordinates, so we left. That decision is final. Then what are we supposed to do? Quindle asked. He sounded broken. What we would have done if you had kept us restricted, Ensu said. Adapt, learn, survive, or do not. Either way, it is not our problem anymore. The delegation was given quarters for the night. Comfortable, but simple. They were not prisoners, but they were not honored guests either. Just visitors who would be leaving soon. Dalver stood on a balcony looking at the stars. Human colonies out there somewhere, growing, expanding, building something new. They really are not coming back, are they? A voice said. Governor Mongdai had joined him. No, Dalver said. We took them for granted. We told them they were not good enough, and now they have moved on. What happens to us? Delvor did not answer. He did not know. The Council was collapsing. Systems failing. Species fragmenting. Maybe they would survive. Maybe they would rebuild. Maybe they would fall apart completely. But whatever happened, it would happen without humanity. The humans had withdrawn quietly, professionally, finally, and they were not coming back. The next morning, the Council delegation was escorted back to their ships. President Ensu saw them off personally. Her last words were simple. We gave you the chance to be partners. You chose to be masters instead, so we chose to leave. That is the power any being has. The the power to walk away from those who do not value them. We use that power, and we will not surrender it again. The Council fleet departed Earth. Behind them, humanity continued building their future. Ahead of them, the Council faced a future without the foundation they had never appreciated. In the flagship, Quindal sat in his quarters, defeated, failed. He had come offering everything, and it had not been enough, because what the humans wanted, the Council could never give them. They wanted to be equals, true equals, not junior partners or probationary members or restricted species, and the Council had proven it did not know how to treat anyone as true equals. It was built on hierarchy, on older species guiding younger ones. Humanity had rejected that hierarchy. And now the Council was learning what happened when you built your civilization on the backs of people you refused to respect. They left. And when they left, everything fell. 2 years after the humans withdrew, the Galactic Council held its final session. Only 19 species sent representatives. The others had stopped participating months ago. Some had collapsed into internal conflicts. Others had simply given up on the idea of galactic cooperation. The council chamber designed for 43 delegations looked empty and sad. Dalver attended as an observer. He was not a council member. He was just a bureaucrat who had documented the collapse. But someone needed to witness the end. Prime Orbiter Quindal was gone. Removed from power. Blamed for the disaster. The new Prime Arbiter was a young Sithari named Velkos. She looked tired. Everyone looked tired. "We have 3 proposals to vote on," Velkos said. "First, formal dissolution of the council. Second, reformation into a loose alliance with no central authority. Third, continuation with reduced scope and membership." The vote was quick. Dissolution won. 22 votes for, 3 against, 4 abstaining. Just like that, the Galactic Council ceased to exist. Some species applauded, others sat in silence. A few wept in their own ways. Delver walked out of the chamber for the last time. Outside, he met Governor Mong. The Thulion looked older, beaten down by 2 years of crisis. "It is really over," Mongai said. "It was over the moment we classified the humans as probationary," Dalvor replied. "We just did not know it yet." The statistics told the story. 37% of council space had lost reliable power. Food shortages affected 200 colonies. The communication network had fractured into isolated segments. Medical care had regressed to pre-human standards. Millions had died. Not from war, not from invasion, from the simple absence of the people who had been holding everything together. But not everyone had suffered equally. Some species had made different choices. On Thulon Prime, Sung Ho stood at the base of the Meridian Gate. The massive space elevator rose into the sky above him. For 2 years, it had been broken, operating at a fraction of capacity, costing the planet billions in lost revenue. Now he was back, not as a council worker, not as someone serving the galactic order, as an independent contractor hired by the planetary government at market rates. "Can you fix it?" a Thule engineer asked hopefully. Sung Ho walked around the base examining the structure he had helped build decades ago. "Yes, it will take 6 months, and it will cost you. But, yes, I can fix it." "Why did you come back?" "Because you asked nicely," Sun Ho said, "and because you are paying me what I am worth. Not what some council regulation says I am worth. What the market says I am worth." He started work the next day. 12 Thulian engineers worked with him, actually learning this time. Not just operating the systems, but understanding them. Sung Ho taught patiently. These were not his subordinates or his masters. They were colleagues, partners. The Meridian Gate was operational again within 5 months. Better than before, actually. And the Thulians now understood how to maintain it themselves. On Satari Prime, Ju worked in a makeshift hospital. The plague had finally been contained after killing 7 million people. It took 2 years. It should have taken 2 weeks. Joshu had come 6 months ago, not representing Earth, not as a council medical officer, as an independent doctor who had heard about the suffering and chosen to help. "Why did you come?" a Satari nurse asked her. "After everything we did to your people. You did not do anything to me personally," Ju said. "The council did. The politicians did. You are just people who got sick, and I am a doctor. Helping sick people is what I do." She had trained 200 Satari doctors in human medical techniques, properly trained them, explained the underlying biology, taught them the principles, not just the procedures. Now they could handle the next outbreak themselves. When Ju left, the Sethari threw her a farewell party. They cried. They thanked her. They offered her anything to stay. "I have to go," she said gently. "There are other places that need help, other people suffering, but you do not need me anymore. You can do this yourselves now." Across former council space, the pattern repeated. Humans returned. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. They came as free agents, as contractors, as independent operators who chose where to work and who to help. They came on their own terms. Some former council species accepted those terms. They hired human engineers at fair rates. They learned from human doctors as students, not subordinates. They traded with human merchants as equals. These species recovered slowly, painfully, but they recovered. Other species refused. Pride would not let them accept help from the species they had once restricted. They demanded that humans return to proper council service. They insisted on the old hierarchies. The humans ignored them, and those species continued to collapse. New political structures emerged. The Democratic Systems Alliance formed 6 months after the council dissolved. 12 species joined, including several former council members. Humanity was invited as a founding member. President Ensu addressed the first Alliance Assembly. "We will join on 3 conditions. First, all members have equal status regardless of age or history. Second, decisions are made by consensus, not by decree. Third, any member can leave at any time without penalty." The Alliance agreed. It was everything the Council had not been: voluntary, equal, respectful. On Earth, Ambassador Heejin gave an interview for the Historical Archives. She was 78 now, ready to retire. The interviewer asked her about the withdrawal. "Do you regret it?" the interviewer asked. Heejin was quiet for a moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the Council could not see us as partners. I regret the suffering that happened because they took us for granted. But the withdrawal itself, no," Heejin said firmly. "We gave them 73 years. We offered our knowledge, our work, our friendship. They called us probationary. They restricted us. They made it clear we were not good enough." She looked directly at the camera. "So we left. We exercised the greatest power any being has, the power to walk away from those who do not value you. We used that power. And in using it, we discovered something important." "What was that?" "That we did not need them nearly as much as they needed us. That we were stronger, more capable, more innovative than they ever allowed us to be. They tried to restrict us for their comfort. We left for our freedom. And in freedom, we thrived." The interview ended, but the message spread across human space and beyond, to species still struggling in former council territory. To anyone who had ever been told they were not good enough, the humans had proven something profound. You do not have to accept being diminished. You do not have to stay where you are not valued. You can leave. You can build something better. And if the old powers cannot survive without you, that is their problem, not yours. 5 years after the withdrawal, a small ship approached the human border. It carried Dalvor and a delegation from the Democratic Systems Alliance. They were not the Council. They were something new, requesting permission to enter human space. Dalvor transmitted, "We wish to discuss a mutual cooperation treaty." Captain Wan Shik, still manning the border station, smiled. "Permission granted. Welcome." The ship passed through. Behind it, former council space continued its slow recovery. Some species were adapting, learning, growing. Others were falling further behind, unable to let go of old hierarchies. And humanity, kept building, kept exploring, kept pushing forward into new regions of space, where no one told them what they could or could not achieve. The Council had tried to manage them, to restrict them, to keep them in a probationary box. Instead, humanity had walked away quietly, without anger or vengeance. They had simply chosen dignity over acceptance, freedom over belonging. And in that choice, they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for generations. You cannot build a civilization on the backs of people you refuse to respect. You cannot take for granted those who hold your world together. And when they leave, when they quietly withdraw and close the door behind them, you do not get to decide if they come back. They do. The Council had made humanity probationary. Humanity had made that decision final. And now, years later, the galaxy was still learning what that meant. Still dealing with the consequences of taking for granted the quiet people who had made everything work. The humans had withdrawn, the council had fallen, and from the ashes, something new was being built. Something based on mutual respect, on genuine partnership, on the radical idea that all species could stand as equals. It was not the galaxy the council had ruled. It was better. And it existed because humanity had the courage to say no, to walk away, to choose themselves. In the end, that was the real revolution. Not violence, not war. Just the quiet dignity of people who knew their worth and refused to accept less than they deserved. The humans quietly withdrew, and the galaxy learned what it had lost. Too late to get it back, but perhaps not too late to learn from the mistake. Perhaps.